Good evening. Welcome to the April 3rd, 2019 meeting of the Murfreesboro Planning Commission. We will call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum present tonight. So our first item of business is going to be election of chair for the remainder of the 2018-2019 term. Mr. Anthony.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Before I get into that, I do want to introduce Chase Salas, our newest planning commissioner. We are thrilled to have you and look forward to working with you for a very long time.
Thank you, Donald.
All right. Ms. Jones, we do need to elect a chair. This would be to complete the term that former Chairman Lamb was elected to. So this individual would serve through the end of June, I believe, and then a new chair would be elected or re-elected in July. So at this time, I would open the floor for nominations.
I'd like to nominate Ms. Kathy Jones as the planning chairman.
Second.
Chairperson, excuse me.
Very good. Are there any other nominations? Ms. Jones, if elected, would you be willing to serve?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. All in favor of Ms. Jones serving as chair?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. With that being done, first of all, congratulations very much. We will look forward to working with you. Good. We will now need to elect a new vice chair as we have a vacancy in that position. We'll open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
I'll make a motion that Ken Halliburton be vice chair of the Planning Commission.
Second.
Are there any other nominations to consider? Mr. Halliburton, if you're elected, would you be willing to serve?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. All in favor of Mr. Halliburton as vice chair to complete this term, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The floor is all yours. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. And it's not for very long. If y'all get to do something different in July if you want to. So our first item of business then will be to approve the minutes of the March 20th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. Did anybody have any changes or corrections to anything in the minutes? If not, we will set those as approved as submitted. Our first public hearing tonight, and only public hearing tonight, is a zoning application for approximately 3.55 acres located along West Northfield Boulevard and Hope Way to be rezoned from MU and GDO 3 to RS 15. New Vision Baptist Church of Murfreesboro, Inc. is the developer. Ms. Green.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairperson Jones. Excited to work with you. As you mentioned, our first and only public hearing this evening is to consider a zoning change request for property that's actually currently owned by the City of Murfreesboro. The City of Murfreesboro has an application pending to transfer ownership of this property to an adjacent property owner, which is the New Vision Baptist Church. This property is a linear strip, and it's shown on the orange on the map before you. You can see that it does have frontage along Hope Way, and what's not as easy to see is that it has frontage along a road that the city is currently constructing, which is the West Northfield Boulevard extension. This road is being constructed as part of the Vanderbilt Medical Clinic facility, which is under construction as well, and will have a connection to North Thompson Lane. Some of the negotiations have been that the church has transferred property which they currently own to the city to connect that road to North Thompson Lane, and the city, of course, is transferring ownership of this property to the church. A stipulation of in the contract was that the property be rezoned from the mixed-use zoning district that's on it to RS 15, because the church is currently zoned RS 15, and a church is considered an institutional group assembly, so it's just one example of an institutional group assembly. That type of use is allowed in the RS 15 district with a special use permit. So this change in zoning would rezone the property from mixed use district and Gateway Design Overlay District to RS 15. That would take it out of the Gateway Overlay District, which we're all familiar with because we work with that pretty frequently. It would, however, remain within the DRC's purview, so that private owners association for which the city is a participant. So there will be similar design standards that would apply if this application is approved as submitted. We do have representatives from the church here this evening. They made sure to be here for you if you have any questions. This plan would make the entire parcel owned by the church one zoning district, which is, I think, part of the reason we advocated for it. I did include a map of the future land use map for your consideration, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Otherwise, you should conduct a public hearing prior to making your recommendation to City Council, and if you have any questions, they would love to answer them.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for the?
Only question I have, Margaret Ann, I'm assuming that the special use permit for the church would automatically apply when this is rezoned, or?
It wouldn't automatically
It would
apply,
not.
no. And they're actually looking at some additional property owned by the city as well. That's between this parcel and what shows up on your map as unnamed road. It's actually the interchange isn't the right word, but the loop or the interchange from North Thompson Lane to West College. I'll show you on the map here on the screen. So here is a portion of excess right-of-way the city has no use for. And so I don't have any idea of timing, but I know for some time they've been working with the city about also acquiring that. So I think when they do that, they'll probably need to do both. So the special use permit would actually need to go to BZA for that.
Okay.
Any other questions? We'll open the public hearing and ask anybody to come forward that would like to speak.
I'll just make one kind of comment just to clear things up. Thank you so much for that. My name is Blake Garner, and I represent New Vision. I've got Greg Freeman here. He's the executive pastor if you guys have any questions. One thing I would add is we actually have completed the transaction. So David and I worked on this, and we closed on this property, I guess it was 2 weeks ago about. So the church now currently owns that slip of property, and so we're just doing what we agreed to do to rezone it to come into conformity with the rest of our property. And again, you heard her say the intended use here is just to do parking. There's a need for parking at the church, and so this is really a perfect location. There'll be access on this new Northfield Boulevard Road for the church, and it's right behind the current location, and it will connect or be right next to the Vanderbilt clinic that's being built, which we anticipate there will be parking there as well. So it will kind of all come into conjunction there, if you will, with the Vanderbilt parking. So if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them, but it is a pretty simple request, I believe.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Any questions at all? Anybody else that would like to speak?
Are there any special restrictions on parking in MU versus what would be changed to the RS-15? I mean,
The restrictions on parking lots
Yeah.
would apply both MU and RS-15. The difference would be the gateway would have some additional standards, or in this case, DRC would have some additional standards that would require basically larger landscape material, trees, more trees, and a separation from the road to the parking lot. For example, the extension in the gateway or in DRC's area would require 25-foot setback from the road to the parking lot. RS-15 doesn't require that, and mixed use doesn't require that. It would be the overlay district.
okay. And there's no specifics that determine the lighting type at this point, as far as whether or not it be LED lighting or whether or not it be incandescent or whatever?
Our zoning ordinance allows both types of lighting, but I would say in the past 3 years, I have not seen anyone put a type of lighting in that wasn't LED. We do regulate the height, we do regulate the fixture type, we do regulate glare, and we do regulate foot candles, both inside and outside of the gateway overlay district. The standards are the same.
Yeah, the reason I ask is for consistency's sake. I'm assuming on their parking lot that they would probably do whatever was currently there, and I don't think they're LED at this point, so.
They would probably not be allowed to do what's there, because probably what's there predates the lighting standards, which were adopted, I think, in 2008. Does that sound right?
Yeah, as far as the lighting goes, we would probably do what's required, what would be more up to date, as opposed to what conforms.
Okay.
We would probably do more up-to-date lighting, because it hasn't been changed, or the current lighting's pretty old.
Yeah. And the reason I say that is because you're talking about going in next to the Vanderbilt parking probably,
Yes, sir.
which I think there would be a pretty strong contrast if you were to not do LED or whatever the current standard would be that we would require. So
Yes, sir.
I'm not really wanting us to take a step backwards by changing the zoning is my point.
I think we're certainly willing to work with staff and work with the Vanderbilt folks to try to make it all be the same.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we will close the public hearing and then see what other questions you all might have. Comments? Motions?
Move for approval, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you all very much. Next, we have staff reports and other business, of which we do have a couple of things on here. First, we have a mandatory referral to consider the disposition of surplus property at the southeast corner of Memorial Boulevard and Airport Road. City of Murfreesboro Administration Department is the applicant. Mr. Blomley.
Chairperson Jones, I think I'm going to take this one. Our administration department has asked us to put this on the agenda. This is a mandatory referral to consider the disposition of surplus property on the airport property. It is the area located on the southeast corner of Memorial Boulevard and Airport Road. There's a drainage ditch in it, and the existing airport sign is located there as well. But other than that, it's not serving much utility, and our city administration department it considers it to be excess property, surplus property, and wishes to dispose of it. With that being said, we would request that the Planning Commission approve the mandatory referral to dispose of this property and transfer it to a private entity in the future for commercial development at that location. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding this mandatory referral. If you recommend approval, then of course it would go on to the City Council for final approval. It's currently zoned commercial highway, and just as a point of clarification, the existing sign will remain on that on that piece of property, as there will be an appendage from the airport property kind of reaching out and grabbing that sign.
So what size parcel are we talking about here? I mean, is it an acre or is it 20 by 20 or?
I don't know for certain. I want to say that it's between 2 and 3 acres.
So is it the whole, I mean, if you look at it, it looks like a finger. Is it the whole finger, or is it just a portion of it?
Mr. Ives,
We are reserving, I'd say, a 20-foot or so strip immediately adjacent to Airport Road, all the way down to Memorial. And so our airport sign will be relocated to that strip, and it will also allow the airport to continue to have a Memorial Road address. So I don't remember the acreage. I don't have the rest of my file here tonight. I thought Gary was going to be here tonight, but I believe he's still out of town. But I think it's a little over an acre. It's acre to 1 to 2 acres. It is if you look at it when you drive by, there is a relatively street level piece of that land, and then behind that is a substantial ditch or dry pond that is part of what was constructed a number of years ago. They called the 231 Basin Drainage Project. And so we have had the engineers and surveyors work on this to make sure that we're not losing any drainage capacity, because that's a regional drainage system. It's not just for the airport or just for this property. But the engineers have been through that, and so we're confident that there is a piece there right at the road that can be a commercial tract. It does the airport no good at all. So we've, a couple of years ago, we started the process of looking at it. We have been through the process to have that released from the FAA restrictions that apply to all of the city's airport land. So they've agreed with us that that's excess for the airport, not necessary for the airport use, so we can dispose of it and put it on the tax rolls and to someone who will hopefully generate sales taxes and all the other good things that we like. The money, the proceeds will go back into development in the airport. That's also part of the condition of the FAA releasing it. Of course, obviously, the federal government has supported the city with a number of grants and loans and that sort of thing to build the airport, and so any money that comes out of that, they want to see go back into the airport, and it will.
And so basically, if I'm turning off of Memorial onto Airport Road, is it that entire parcel on the right as I drive from Memorial up to
Correct.
the airport?
Correct. It's a vacant area across Airport Road from Walmart.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
If there are none, I'll make a motion we accept all or any staff comments.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. And second, we have another mandatory referral to consider the disposition of surplus property along West Vine Street. City of Murfreesboro Legal Department is the applicant. Mr. Plumley.
You want to take it, or should I be the legal department tonight?
Why don't you be the legal department tonight?
Mr. Ives.
This little piece of property, it's about 20 by 40. The city acquired it 3-4 years ago with the intention of using it to place the transformers that are in that alley, the alley that runs there from Vine to Main and between Maple Street and Walnut Street. We intended to place all those transformers underground and get rid of those power poles that still are in the alley and make all that underground service behind the alley. We acquired the property, and then as engineering continued, they determined that the distance was too great to put those transformers in at that location and still be able to serve the people that are fronting on Main Street and further down between the alley and Market and Walnut Street, which are served from those transformers that are currently there. So after that, it was then determined that it wouldn't work to bury the transformers at that location, and so we didn't have any other use for it. We have surveyed our other department heads. We do intend to keep a small water line easement at the back of the property right adjacent to the alley, because there is a new water line that was put in there as part of that alley reconstruction. So the city doesn't really have a need for it. The adjoining property owner there has indicated he would like to buy it and have it. He's been parking on it as it is, and probably he'll put some pavement down on it. Right now it's a gravel lot, but that he would buy it for parking for his building. So that's our proposal to sell that to him, and so we'd request your approval of that and recommendation on the City Council to approve the sale.
So will that then go through like as a separate little lot of record, or will you?
Sorry, but
will that go through as a separate lot of record, or will you?
It still is a separate lot of record.
Plat to attach it to his current property, or?
He would not have to replat it at this point. So I don't know, and that at least at this time we hadn't made that a requirement.
Oh, that's a detail. Sorry.
The prior owner actually had a plan to build a building on that lot. You know, in the CBD, you can build up to the property line. You don't have to have a setback. Now, once you take out a stairwell, because he was going to do a 2 or 3 story, and once you take out a stairwell and some things like that, you don't get a lot of space on each floor. I'm not sure it is would ever be economic to do something like that, but legally a person could put a building on that.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. Ives, can I ask a question? When do we know, particularly as far as just looking at the tax records, and I know it's not always accurate, looks like we paid about $36,000 to the owner for that remnant parcel. How is it determined what value that person will pay for this as we sell it back to them? What's that process like?
We have asked that to sell it at the price we paid for it, and that's the agreed price.
Okay.
Actually, we had it appraised before we bought it, and the appraisal was a little under $36,000, but not a lot under, but a little bit under, and we elected to, that was the amount they asked for, and we thought it was cheaper than trying to do it by condemnation and possibly pay still more, so that was the agreed-upon price, and this buyer has agreed to pay us the same amount. So we'll be out a few closing costs, but as on a principal return basis, we're selling it for what we paid for it.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
And while it's not a lot of money, it will go back on the tax rolls.
There are no other questions. I'll make a motion we approve, subject to staff comments.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Do we have any other business tonight?
Only other thing I would tell you, I may have mentioned it once before, but we are going to try to plan about a half-day retreat workshop sometime in May, and I'll be in touch with Ms. Jones here in the next few days to start trying to work on that, and we'll send out some dates and see what works for everybody. That's all I have.
Wonderful. All right. We stand adjourned. Thank you.